I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com for this very special early Sunday release. I had a guest on the beginning of February, actually February 9th. He made a prediction that that the market would top out right about here, and then he said, "Well, yeah, but Wednesday, the following Wednesday, there could be something pretty epic and something pretty ugly could happen from there." That was the exact top of the market, and 160 points after our interview aired. And you know what we got? We got the fastest plunge into bear market territory. It went down to 36%. He said it'd be down 35 to 40%, 36 and change. And then for a day this past week, we're out of bear market territory. And then on Friday, bam! After a $2.2 trillion stimulus, porculus, debtulous package was passed in the House, it passed in the Senate the day before. It's going to be signed by the president. Probably already been signed by the president. We get an almost 900-point drop. That was not what they were expecting. That's not what anybody in Wall Street billed to the Trump administration, which this is not his fault. We have a huge debt problem. And I'm bringing on the person that made those big calls. It's Polny of 2020 forecast.com, correct? That's your website?
Close. Gold.
Oh, Gold 2020. I'm sorry.
Forecast.
Gold 2020
But I appreciate it,
forecast.com.
Greg.
But you do Bitcoin, you do the stock market, you do gold, silver, you do a variety of cycle timing. You call yourself an analyst of time. Well, let's start with this almost 900 point drop, Bo Pony from Gold 2020 forecast.com. You made a big call back in February of 2020. Incidentally, on my weekly news wrap-up, I had said it was September. I don't know what I was thinking. I said it. I had to do a disclaimer. But it was the 9th of February 2020 is when our interview aired. You are on the early Sunday release now. Friday is over. We had almost a 900-point drop. Let's key off. Let's start right there to start this interview. What happened? What do you think is going on?
Everything that I do, Greg, it's about timing. Timing is critical, not so much the price. And so when we spoke last, we scheduled this interview the beginning of February. Why? Because based on the timing cycle, the markets were supposed to top, and they did exactly that. But then once the markets topped, we had this sharp drop right afterwards to the pretty much the exact level we were looking at, maybe around the 35%. It came down to 36%. So that's leg one. The reason we scheduled that interview was because earlier in a prior video, I discussed with you this biblical timeline, this biblical cycle. It's the 4-2-1 cycle. And that was the completion of the 4 cycle last time we interviewed. And so a month ago, Greg, I asked you, Greg, if you want to do a second interview, let's do it at the end of March, which is right now. Why do we schedule the interview here at the end of March? Because if you go back to the slide presentation that I gave you in the last interview, the end of March was point letter D on the charts, D like David. So today, and this time point of March, the markets are sitting at letter point D like David. And what follows is a turn down and then a plunge into letter E, which comes in the month of April.
And here's the interview right here. You had a circle in this little box here. And sure enough, you said, hey, this could be epic. And a few days later, it was aired on the Sunday, and on Wednesday, bam, that was the top. And we had the sleigh ride right down the mountain. And then you said, and in your charting, in the interview, you can go back and look at this, you said you had this kind of a pattern where it would go out, it would bounce up. Well, all this hoo-ha over this jubilation. We're going to have a debtulous package, a porculus package, a stimulus package. It would bounce up. And now you're saying we're somewhere right around here. We're somewhere here. This is the end of 330, 331. That's the end of the D pattern. That's your timing. And then after that, hello, let's take a free ride down to, 15,000 or whatever. I mean, you had a couple of points you made the last time, and one of them hasn't happened yet. Tell me about your points. Tell me about where we are with this chart.
So looking at that chart, The timing point is not the pricing point, it's a timing point. The timing point ends at the end of March. So there's 2 more days, Monday and Tuesday. So potentially we might have a little bounce, maybe a little higher. It doesn't matter. But by the time Tuesday rolls along into, say, Wednesday of next week, the start of April, the markets begin to turn down again. And then we start working the one pattern. So it's 4 months, 2 months, 1 month. The 1 month is the month of April. The month of April is the move where the gold stock market is supposed to then fall into letter point E, like Edward. The letter point E, if I had to guess price, again, I don't like to give price, but I'll guess price. It's supposed to be the crash of the century, so that means that potentially should go greater than 50%. So that would take it to under 15,000 on the Dow potentially in the month of April.
And you said, listen, we had the stock market and the gold market kind of going down, even though it didn't go down that much. And you predicted that as well. You said it'll be choppy in March and it'll go down, and I think the low will be around, I don't know, 1550, maybe a little lower. We didn't get much lower than that. And he said, but now you're saying that we get the opposite. We get a divergence. Please, in the pre-interview, you talked about a divergence. What is the divergence that you're talking about?
When gold was shooting up into the 1600s, 1650 range, silver was shooting up, the mining stocks were shooting up, everybody was so excited in February. And I think you remember our conversation. I said, don't be too excited because the markets top out the end of February, and then gold and silver have a down cycle in the month of March.
Yeah,
well, look what happened. And then why did I schedule the interview with you at the end of March? Because the end of March was a final entry point to get in on gold, silver positions, because once April comes, gold and silver will do the opposite. Again, please understand my word, opposite of what they did in March. So in March, gold, silver, mining stocks collapsed, and so did the stock market. They moved together. In the month of April, you will see the stock market take leg 2 down into letter point E. At that time point, or when that is occurring, gold, silver, and the mining stocks, but specifically gold and silver, are going to do truly epic. And there is a really awesome time point that I've given your last interview, and I'm going to give again today, because this time point is incredible. It's a biblical calculation. So I am waiting to see what happens at this time point, because it is supposed to be truly an epic time point. And again, that time point comes in at April 21st, plus or minus 7 days. But the time point of April 21st of this year is supposed to be something truly where the world changes and one starts to basically comes to an end, or something really obvious happens. And then so come into the month of May, we have this new time point, this new era, this new rise. And it's supposed to be pretty incredible. And please don't look at this as anything negative. This is something truly biblical. Anything biblical is awesome. It's incredible because the Bible is everything about the good news. And so this time point coming in April, there's 2 awesome events that have happened in history at this time point. Key word is Passover. And so right at that time point is Passover, which is incredible because that was a time when Pharaoh, after the plagues, was what? Forced to give up to God, and he actually let Israel go. Moses' words were, "Let my people go." And also then thousands of years later, you have the birth of Christ and the death of Christ, and then the resurrection of Christ at Easter time. It's the Passover. Jesus was the Passover lamb. And so at an incredible time point where I believe, again, this is just my best guess, we'll have to see what happens, but I believe at this time point, we are going to see God's hand intervene on our world, and we're going to have an incredible financial and just a general shift of everything in our world coming in a few weeks from now. So I'm looking forward to see what happens because I believe we've all been waiting for change in our life, and I think this is, God moving his hand, and we're going to see something really incredible go down here, Greg. So I'm excited, and I know something big is coming.
Wow, a new era in time. You've been saying that, and other people are saying we're going to have a paradigm change, and I'm thinking, wow, it's kind of like the Big Bang Theory. Oh, you mean like let there be light? A new era in time. I love that. I think that's fantastic. Okay, so people want
So
to
I
know
want to
now.
interrupt you just for a minute.
Go ahead.
Actually, so the new era in time. This is critical because you just said something, a new paradigm shift. Okay.
Okay.
That's man's definition of it. Okay. This is where you have to understand the difference between man's world and God's world. God describes it as a new era in time. That's critical. Okay, those are God's words. Those are not my words. Those are God's words. When they tell you a paradigm shift, that's the lie. It's a lie, okay? There's no paradigm shift coming. God is bringing his kingdom to this earth. And so those that are telling you this is a paradigm shift, that's like, it's just sugarcoating everything with a lie. Okay. Everything the words are crystal clear, important, and era in time is what's coming. It's not a paradigm shift, because a paradigm shift is something created by man, and that's not what's coming.
Okay, point taken. Good point. People want to know where we're going. You booked this interview before I did. Nenner, a brilliant guy who came on and said he was also taking his clients out of the market. This was a little before you, and you even called me up later and said, "Yeah, you know what? I totally agree with him. I mean, from a different standpoint, he's doing it from his cycle work, and I'm doing it from mine. But I'm in total agreement." And I said, "What about this 5,000?" You at that. I think he's right. People laughed at him for years. Oh, 5,000 on the Dow. Well, how do we get there? Well, you're saying the same thing, and here's where I'm holding this chart up. I'm actually jumping ahead a little bit to describe where we're going. I mean, if anybody's wanting to get out of this market, you're got a long sled ride if you want to be the long-term investor that you want to do and wait for it to come back. Do you not? I mean, tell me about this.
First off, I want to say what your people are looking at, what your viewers are looking at here. I worked long and hard on this presentation. And there is a link in Greg's website. Please click the link on his website, not YouTube channel, website. And actually, I'll put it on my website too as well. Follow along. This is page 23 of the presentation. Okay,
yeah.
So
and
please,
just so you know, we're going to start from the beginning here in just a minute. But we're going to jump ahead to page 23. And yes, you can open it up in another browser. This is a free deal. You don't need a code. You don't need to put your credit card down. You need nothing. Just go into usawatchdog.com, go to the after interview section, or go to gold2020forecast.com. You can find it there. Open it up in another browser. You can stop and start, whatever. But we're going to jump ahead because I want people to know that what we have coming is ugly. And go ahead.
I'm going to pull page 23 for just a second, Greg, because it actually shows, and it's in the top right-hand corner of what you're looking at, Greg. So people are saying, okay, that's the megaphone patterns. It's stilly. It's not going to happen. Really? Really, it's not going to happen. Okay, 23 was a chart that I gave you in February. This is the pattern that I drew, Greg. And this was 0.5, which never happened in February. Okay, so now we've got 0.5. It was a 36% market crash in the month of March. So now people are like, well, wow, actually it did happen. Okay, so now if the megaphone 1 of 2 occurred, megaphone 2 of 2 is actually even more fascinating, because what it points to is a market drop which keeps falling. Potential target is 5,000. I got 5,050 range on the Dow. And so the time point comes in for the end of the year 2022. So between now and the year 2022, we are in the end, not the beginning, the end of the year 2022, we are looking for an incredibly terrible stock market crash. Now, this is critical to understand. There's two possibilities here, okay, with the same result. We may have a massive inflationary move on the stock market, and the stock market could, this is possible, after point E comes in April, we could have a massive rally on the stock market, okay? Could potentially go to new highs. Should that happen, it's going to rally into next year. And then what it's going to do is collapse into December of 2022. The other possibility is a rally only into this roughly September, and then the markets turn and then do a drop into 2022. The higher it goes, the bigger the crash. So we will know by later this year which cycle's going out. But the bottom line I'm telling you is that what Mr. Nenner had said, my charts are pointing, the 5,000 number is a realistic number and a very plausible number. I'm giving you one thing extra, and I'm giving you a time point, which I believe to be incredibly accurate moving into the next few years forward.
And
the 2 years forward.
Yeah, and the divergence continues. So you're expecting
right, and so
let's talk about gold coming up in April. So you said
yes. Okay, so we need to talk about divergence, right? So this is where we want to talk about the divergence. We talked specifically about, what's gold and silver going to do? Well, the markets are going to go down. Gold and silver is going to go to $4, $9. Silver is going to collapse further. No, it's not. Okay, gold and silver are not going to go. Gold's not going to go deeper. In fact, gold's going to go higher. What's going to happen in April is something really awesome. On the next leg down, as the equity stock markets plunge, gold and silver are going to diverge and go the other direction. And go in the other direction like you and I have probably never imagined or could imagine. So I'm excited, again, for the month of April, because I'm excited to see what prices are going to come. Because there is potential that if there was ever, Greg, a point in time in our world that something epic and dramatic would change, it would be this coming month at the time of Passover. Because God acts and moves at these important time points because it's his calendar. And so this Passover season, expect something epic. Expect a movement of God's hand. When God moves his hand, those that have been controlling this precious metal market potentially could completely lose control, and we could see an incredible price move. So April is going to be, I believe, an incredibly important time in our world. I believe God is going to move his hand to do something to take back his kingdom of complete evil that's been running this world.
Let's start with this. Let's just go through the thing real quick so people can kind of read along, and let's start with number 1, page 1 on your free PowerPoint. This is totally free, folks. You need no credit card, no code. You need nothing. You can open it up in another window. Go to usawatchdog.com. Go to the Polny interview. Go to the current one. Go to in the early Sunday release, and go down to the after the interview section and open up the God's 7 Kingdoms free PowerPoint presentation. And let's start on page 1. Bo, you have the floor.
Greg, there's a God in heaven, and he wrote the end at the beginning. That's the place we want to start, okay? Everything that's happened in the market so far has not been a guess. It's been a pattern and a cycle that's been given to me, I believe, or I think that's what's happened, because I could never have figured all these patterns out on my own. And so when I get them, I draw charts and I put it. And what I did was I created this PowerPoint presentation for your viewers. I believe this is the first time the world has ever seen this detailed explanation of Daniel's timeline right to the return of Messiah. And this presentation blows my mind because I don't understand how I came up with these numbers. It is the extension of what Daniel did for Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, and Daniel, out of the blue, asked for an interpretation, and he got it from God, and he gave it to Nebuchadnezzar. And he described the kingdoms from the start to the end. And I'm going to take that was done 2,600 years ago, and I'm going to go into further details for you into what's about to come.
Let's start on page 1. Let's go ahead. And people you can't do all this. We'd be here
right.
for an hour.
I'm going to go through the presentation. The link is there. I'm going to go at a nice speed because I'm going to just summarize what you're looking at.
People can come back and study this later because every page, there's a lot going on in every page. And there's one page, the gold page, I want to stop on, and I want you to talk more about that in detail. But let's start with page one, where the what is the statue? This is in Revelations, the God with the gold head and the feet of clay and the toes. Tell me about that.
Okay, so we're gonna go through this page by page, but basically that statue was a statue that was in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, and he was freaked out. He had two dreams on it, and he didn't know what it meant. He knew it was something very powerful. And Daniel gave Nebuchadnezzar the interpretation to his dream, and it's fascinating because all of it's happened so far. All of it, everything that he gave Nebuchadnezzar 2,600 years ago has come to pass. And the cycle is not over yet. And I want to finish the patterns of cycles for you. This is supernatural precision of past and future events. Anybody who goes to this presentation doesn't blow their mind, I don't know what to tell you, because this is truly, truly incredible. Page 2 talks about the number 7, and it starts with the number 7 in creation. God created everything. At the beginning, he writes the end. So he writes the whole story. It's a 7,000-year cycle. It starts 4,000 BC-ish. Okay, that was creation. Go do your homework on it, but creation was 4,000. Then at the time of creation, we knew that there was a war in heaven, so the angels were, a third of Lucifer and a third of the angels were thrown out of heaven, and they were thrown to earth. Now, they weren't on earth, they were in earth. And then so they had to be let onto earth. So basically you had the Adam and Eve story. So they bite the apple, and then Lucifer,
now we're on page 3.
Gets onto the earth. Now we're on page 3. So okay. Evil gets onto the earth. And the evil now screws up perfection. Okay, because Adam and Eve were created in God's image perfectly. Okay, so that's critical. It's the perfection story. Okay, and so then the fallen angels end up mating with women, and you have the Nephilim, the giants, and so God has to destroy this immense evil that is on the earth, and so he creates. And then Noah shows up on page 4 with the flood, and then everybody knows the flood story, and so then there's the flood. Now the problem with the flood with the Noah's Ark was Cush gets on the ark. Cush is carrying the evil seed still. Cush ends up coming off the ark. Nimrod was born. Nimrod ends up dying. Before that all happened, the mother Semiramis had an adulterous affair. So there's all this mess went on, and then so she ended up claiming that Nimrod came back from the dead, and they had a son by the name of Tammuz. And so that creates the start of paganism and sun worship. So that's the start of the whole story. Then you've got several hundred years later.
This is step 5. This is 5:17.
Page 5. This incredible prophet shows up by the name of Isaiah. And Isaiah writes Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53 describes the life of the Messiah. And so it clearly describes what's going to happen to him, the whole story. So Isaiah 53, then about 100 years later, Daniel shows up. And Daniel basically...
That's page 6.
Page 6. So Daniel, 100 years later, describes when the Messiah would die. The Messiah would die before the destruction of the second temple. And if you do the research, the second temple was destroyed in 70 AD. So that was 70 years after 0. So that's when Messiah would be dead before the destruction of the second temple. So that prophecy was fulfilled. Basically, Isaiah 53 and Daniel prophecy were both fulfilled. So now, what is the dream?
Page
the
7.
Dream itself is on page 7.
Good.
So the dream describes beasts. Now, a beast in the Bible is a kingdom, or each kingdom has a king. Make sense?
Yeah.
So the first kingdom was Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom. Okay, so that was number 1. He was the golden head. He was Babylon. Okay, so he was a king of the kingdom. Then you have the chest, which was Persia, which was Cyrus. Then you had thighs, which was Greece, and that was Alexander the Great. And then you had the legs, which is Rome. Each one followed the next. Incredible. This actually all happened. And then you get to the feet. The feet were made of iron and clay. Now, this is important because iron and clay do not mix. And so you have two kingdoms bound by clay mixed in with iron, so it's not perfect, okay? And so it can never bind, and it will never be perfect. Page 8, and talk about the legs of Rome. Constantine is the one, is the power of Rome, the king of Rome, and he ends up taking, and he creates this big pagan issue where he now gets involved with Christianity. He switches all these pagan gods, switches Jupiter to Peter. He changes Hermes, to Christ. Semiramis and the child become Mary and the baby. And so he basically takes paganism and he rolls it right over onto Christianity, and he basically mashes everything into one big mess. If we go to page 9, feet. Okay, the feet are made of iron and clay again. Now, this is the cool part, okay? So God basically clearly stated that there will never, ever be, they will never bind, they will never be one. And so the feet are, how many toes are on your feet? 10. So incredibly enough, the feet describe modern Europe. There's actually 10 toes or 10 tribes. Now, 3 become extinct. As 3 become extinct, because one rises up of it, and that one that rises ends up being the papacy. And so the papacy now, check this out. Papacy rules for 1,260 years, 1,260 years, Daniel's timeline. Now, in this timeline, they try to resurrect a one-world kingdom. King Charlemagne, you got Charles V, Louis IX, Napoleon, Adolf Hitler, and recently, modern times, Brexit. They're constantly trying to unite Europe, and it's never going to work because God prophesied you're never going to have a union, ever, ever in this kingdom. Page 11, we're at papacy, the 1,260-year cycle, incredibly. And then the reason it ends at 1798 because why? Napoleon has enough, arrests and kills or has the Pope killed. That creates the bruise on the head of the beast, of the kingdom. And so this kingdom loses all its power. So the papacy still has, it's around, but it has no power. Because in the time they had the time when they had power, they had the Inquisition, they're killing millions of Christians. That's when they had power. Now they've lost all their power. So now as this kingdom is falling, it's a mixture, right? Another one's rising. So now we get to page 12. The next kingdom that rises is the United States of America, the USA. Guess what happened right around the exact same time that the Pope was killed by Napoleon. Within a few years of that, right on the end of 1776, right at the same exact time as it's all mixing together, 76, you get the Declaration of Independence. Okay, so that is the rise of the next beast. Now, when I say beast, it's a kingdom. So don't look at this like it's a kingdom. So this kingdom rises. Now, we know the last kingdom was 1,260 years. So that we would assume that this next kingdom, USA, right, would have another 1,260 years. Wrong. Not going to happen. The reason being is because if you read Revelation, it says that the final kingdom will rule. God will rule and reign for 1,000 years. This final kingdom will rule and reign forever. And that basically describes the statue when the rock hits, carved up not by man, but this rock comes in, which is, the God is the rock, and destroys all these kingdoms. And his kingdom rules and reigns forever on this earth for 1,000 years. That brings us to return. Everyone's like, when does Christ return? I will tell you clearly, crystal clearly, God return in the 2 cycle. Okay, so the 2 cycle is the year, this decade. So this decade is going to bring incredible changes to our world, but the return of Christ comes in the 3rd decade. But the point is, this whole story has been going on for 2,000 years. So now the time frame of critical importance would be right at the end of this decade, and the next in 7 years forward, taking us to 2036. That's a critical time point for Christ. More important, actually, is to know the truth about timing. Any entity, please read my lips, any entity, any power that shows up in this decade is lying to you if they call themselves God. It's the great deception. The great deception comes in the 2nd decade of this century.
So in Christ returns after 2030.
Anytime after 2029. So if we go to scroll to page 18, Greg,
yep,
you're going to see Daniel's timeline of the Trump cycle. It's 2 cycles of 1,260 days. That timeline maximum time point is December of 2023.
And so you're saying, hold on.
Trump brings 7 years of grace.
And so you're saying that so Trump's going to get reelected, and he's going to go out at least to 2023, his presidency.
Correct.
If not
to the end of that year minimum.
If not, there may be turbulent times
minimum to that time frame.
Yeah. So you don't know whether he'll be still president after that or not. But he gets reelected, and we have 7 years of grace.
Right. So we're halfway through that right now.
So we're on page number 18, so people can study that.
The Daniel cycle. This is what people got confused on your show when I talk about the 1260 cycle. Okay. The 1260 cycle is illustrated on page 19. It's a time window. Yes, it describes it's a 7,000-year cycle, but the time frame can be 1,260 days, 1,260 months, years. You can use that, and you use it specifically on gold and silver. So page 19 shows that how I was able to correctly forecast gold's top in 2011 to the exact day. Okay, look at the page. It shows you it was Daniel's timeline that allowed me to figure out the time point for gold's top. Okay, so now Trump wins the election. The 1260 cycle ends on page 20. It ends on the 21st of April. That is going to be an epically important time point for our world.
So from his election time in 2016, November 8th, it stops at 1260 is the 21st of April.
Yes, and as we talked about earlier about Passover and Easter, the Lamb of God, Jesus Christ, the Lamb. So that all lands on Passover. So as crazy as it is, the 1260 cycle ends right, give or take, actually give or take plus or minus 7 days. Like I said, that cycle ends on Passover, incredibly.
Now let's talk about the Dow Jones. We've seen this already. We're on page 22 now. Here's the pattern that you said you got the top, you nailed it. A couple of days later, it's the absolute top of the market. You said, here's this boing, boing, boing. So we are here, right here with the market. So if you were going to try to get out of the market, then now's as good a time as any, right?
Okay, so again, I don't want to give anybody financial advice. I'll give you timing advice, okay, or timing information. The cycle that I look at, the cycle ends as March ends. That's all I can tell you. Point D is a timing point, not a pricing point. Letter point D ends as the month of March ends. Okay. And that's all I can tell you with that. What price it'll be, who cares? All I'm telling you is that as March ends and April begins, we're expected to have the turn down, and the market should begin to fall downwards, and letter E is coming, and that is next.
And you think the next stop here in this cycle is going to be somewhere in the 15,000 range?
Complete guess on my part, but an educated guess.
Yeah, you were close on it before. You said it would go down, and you said it would be 35 to 40%. You said 35, maybe 40. Well, 36, close enough. Then it would go up to the 2,400 range. I mean, we got a big bounce, predicted it. Your timing, your charts, your analysis, and now you're saying now we get a cliff dive. And then while we get this cliff dive for the stocks, gold and silver will start edging and start going up.
I don't think the word edging is appropriate. I think it's spike.
Big move.
Big move. Yes,
I think they just printed $2.2 trillion. Fitch Ratings is threatening to cut our AAA rating. I mean, they're talking about another round of this. The Fed is printing money like crazy on the other side. Their balance sheet, just so everybody knows, so you understand. Where I want to reference some facts. For the first time in history, the Fed balance sheet, this is what they will admit to, is over $5 trillion. So remember, they were trying to burn this off and trying to reduce it, and they got down to 3.7 or 3.8 trillion. Well, we're back to $5 trillion. How will that affect the U.S. dollar in terms of inflation and buying power?
This next cycle is going to expose itself. The new financial system gets exposed come after the April 21st time point. So come May, I believe we're going to see, or not even as April ends, we're going to see this new financial system explode and be born. And so you'll see the birth of it. Now, they're going to do everything they can to fight and take it back down again. So don't expect it to do a moonshot and not stop. They're going to hammer it down again.
Just so people know, on Friday, and this is a big move. So we're on Sunday here. So Friday, the dollar clocked a plus 1% drop in a day.
Yes.
Does that surprise you that the dollar was off a 1%, a little more than 1% on a day that they passed a $2.2 trillion debtulous, porculous, what they're calling a stimulus bill? Does this surprise you? And give us your thoughts on the big drop in the dollar.
Well, the dollar cycle, when I look at it, from a charting pattern, it created a double top on the monthly cycles. So those are very ugly. Usually they're followed by immense crashes afterwards. So if the stock market's going to tank, that's what the charts are pointing to. The dollar seems to be moving today with the stock market. So if you're going to think about this, Greg, for a second, right? So my charts are telling me that we have divergence between gold and the stock market. So in the month of April, gold, silver, and mining stocks go up while the equity markets collapse. Now, point back to March. In March, gold, silver, and mining stocks and the stock market crashed, and the dollar went up. So of the three, you're going to have gold going up, which means that the dollar is going to have to go down.
Unbelievable move on the dollar, down 1%. That's a big move on any currency, especially the U.S. dollar.
Well, if you remember my interview I had with you, Greg, last interview I had with you, right? There was 4 points, which was in the red box right here, which I'll post or show you. But the number 4 was, it's pretty fascinating. Number 4, these are God's words.
Give me number 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, number 1. So number 1.
And you hold on. I just want to give it a little color here. I want to add a little information. You said this. This was the 4 points that you made in your February 9th interview. You made all 4 of these points, and 3 of them have happened. Give me 1, 2, and 3.
So number 1, will be quick, rapid, and sudden. Number 2, it will shake faith and confidence. Number 3, they, meaning the ones that control the system, will not know what hit them. Plague. Number 4, which is critical, they will try to stop it, but they will fail.
Well,
and for that reason, point E is coming.
And the almost 900-point drop on a day where both houses of Congress, got together and sang "Kumbaya" on a porculous package. This is not what they wanted. They thought this would stop this. It didn't happen, and that's a big move.
They will try to stop it, and they will fail. Oof. Look what's happening, Greg. What we've seen so far in the March crash, and I want to use 2 specific words. What we've seen in March was a crash, okay? And it dropped down 2,000, bounced 1,000, dropped another 2. So that's called a crash. We have not seen a plunge. The plunge comes in April. A plunge could be probably 4,000 in a day, maybe 5. I don't know. I'm just saying it'll trump the move. It'll double to triple any worst day we've seen so far in March.
And let's go on to your megaphone. We've already talked about this, but we're on page 23 so people can follow along. And the point you were making was that you were predicting that there was going to be a big drop off, and there was. That's on page 23. Page 24, which is 97 to 2020, and the 2022 is what it is, I think. And then it goes down this huge. You and Nenner are both talking 5,000 on the Dow.
No one. I'm not getting paid for this, Greg. I'm giving it to all your viewers because I want people to see this. Okay. So the cycle time point comes in the end of the year 2022.
Yeah, and then we're going on to page 20.
The year 2022 is going to be ugly.
Okay, 25. Let's go to page 25, gold. So here's the page. You're putting it up on the screen now, and I'm going to put it right here. It's one full screen, and here's your gold right here. This little circle. And you said that resistance would become support. And certainly it has, and you're saying this is your drop-off point. You're getting ready this thing's getting ready to take off.
Getting ready, yes. It's getting ready to do a massive move, and I believe it comes in April. It's resistance. If you go back to the left side of the chart, that 1557 held gold for roughly 2 years, and it finally collapsed through it. They made this massive cup, or it's a U-shaped recovery, and it finally, after 5 months, busted through 1557 2 months ago. It came back, dropped through it really briefly on the crash, and shot right back up. So now it's above 1557. So 1557 is the ground floor for gold right now, and all we're missing is is actually the spike.
And these are the phony Crimex numbers and LBMA, which is in. I'm reading. We've been hearing this for a while, but the demand is unbelievable. So the real price is now also decoupled from the phony silver prices. I mean, you got silver at what, 14 and 15, and you can't buy it for less than 25. You can't buy gold for less than 17 and change, 18. You could buy 1 ounce coins on Kitco just the other day, and they sold out for the equivalent of about 10 coins for the equivalent for about $2,000. They were also selling, and they sold out. Kitco, I just used it as a marker, some quarter-ounce maple leafs, which was about the equivalent of $2,000 an ounce, the real price. And so we're getting the prices on the criminal numbers are separating from the physical market. Could you talk about that?
Right. So they want to keep this game going, and they're trying to control the price. The problem is that the inventory is running dry, and soon enough we're going to have an event. Again, I believe April brings an event. I believe April is the month that God moves his hand. I believe this is a critical time point for our world. And, we might see silver at $60, $70. It might be priced at 30, but they're charging $60 to own it. I don't know how the whole separation is going to work, but I can tell you
it's clearly separated.
Expect it to start expanding. So the price might be 30 for silver, but it might be $100 to get your hands on it. Again, these are numbers I'm making up, but we're going to see this expansion, and finally it's just going to pop and blow. And so that's what's coming, and it's going to be exciting as all heck. But numbers, triple digits on silver are going to be simple when this thing goes down.
And you're already here on page number 26. The second cycle begins. You've covered that. And you can there's a lot of stuff on each one of these panels, folks, so you can cover it.
So basically when Trump's cycle ends, actually there's something very important on page 26. It's called the arcs of safety. Noah built an ark for safety, okay? Arcs of safety need to be built. These are areas that are built outside of the cities. We have between now and the end of 2023 and the end of the Trump cycle to situate yourself. Please listen to me. If you think this is crazy, okay, well, if I told you a month ago there'd be no food on the shelves, you'd think I was crazy. Yeah. But it happened, okay? Yeah. 7 years of famine's coming. You have time to prepare. You set your arcs up in communities. You got and being out of cities is critical. I want to point the best research on this and the best discussions on this is done by the prophet, which I am not. The prophet Lois Vogel-Sharp speaks very clearly about these safe havens, these areas of arcs of safety. So these are very important to get set up in the next few years, because when Trump leaves office or when that cycle's over, it's going to get ugly. So we have page 27 talks about a gold standard coming, and then how potentially what the plan is with blockchain. So have a read through that. Page 28 says the finish of the cycle comes in December of 2023. And then page 29 is actually quite interesting.
Lots on this page.
Because it talks about the rise of Antichrist. This time frame between now and the end of this decade is so anyone that comes up and declares something power of that they can save this and fix this and they can fix the the plagues and everything it's a lie. They're lying to you. He's lying to you. It's called the Great Deception. Okay? So I'm just telling you, the Great Deception comes before the return of Christ.
And we're on page 30.
And so in this time frame, we're going to see the Temple Mount in Israel. I believe that's going to get destroyed. And then you're going to have the rebuilding of the Third Temple. We're going to have hyperinflation. We're going to have poverty. We're going to have famine. We're going to have crop failures. The world falls apart. And guess who comes to save the day? I promise you it's not Messiah. He'll call himself that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And just so people know, when Christ makes his entry, it's horns are blowing, angels are singing, everybody's going to know his entry. It's not going to be just
Correct.
some guy stepping up going,
Correct.
"I'm the new Messiah," which he won't be. He'll be coming from the
Sorry.
heavens. It's going to be a big, huge, obvious entrance, just so people know. So anybody coming up saying, "Oh, I can fix this," like what you're saying, it's a total BS. And we're on page 30, and this is all free, folks. This is you can follow this along. We're on page number 30 about God's 7-year time frame.
This is a summary. Page 30 is the countdown. This is the greatest thing that was shown to me. This was the piece that Daniel never got. This is the greatest piece of the entire cycle. It's when I was in Vienna, I go to the cold check, I get a ticket, 421. You know what it means? It's a 7,000-year cycle to the return of Christ that started 4,000 BC. That was creation. We had a 4,000-year cycle. That was the time of the Jews, okay? Then you had birth of Christ. That brings it to 0. Then you have 2,000 years go by. That's the time of the Gentiles. What's a Gentile? Non-Jew, okay? And so God's chosen people initially was the 4,000 years of the Jews. And then you have the 2,000 years who accepted Messiah, and there was a massive deception at 0 when the Jews rejected Christ. And again, very simply, go Isaiah 53 and the part about Daniel. Those two you cannot find anywhere in the Hebrew text. It was removed. Okay, so you have 2,000 years of the time of the Gentiles, and this is the beautiful part. Okay, we're getting close to the return of Christ, and it's a 4,000-year cycle, 4, followed by a 2,000-year cycle, 2, time of the Gentiles, into a 1,000-year cycle, 1 cycle, 4, 2, 1. This end time cycle was written from the beginning, given to Daniel. This is a 7,000-year cycle. The last 1,000 years is the marriage, it's the Christ marriage of the Jews and the Gentiles into one kingdom. The first time in history there will ever be one kingdom on this earth, because every other kingdom has failed and will always fail, and there will never be one kingdom on this earth until the return of Christ for the 1,000 years. That will be a 1,000-year Sabbath. And that's my presentation. And I truly hope that people grasp the power of what this 421 cycle is, Greg.
Yeah. Listen, there's time to get ready. You predicted that there was going to be a big crash. We got a crash. They obviously couldn't stop it. They tried this 2.2 trillion. Well, they got a 900-point pie in the face on Friday after the House passed it, which it is what it is. And you're saying that this isn't going to end until sometime in the 21st of April. But what starts in April is a big price rise in gold and silver.
Correct.
And you think a big hit on the dollar, on the U.S. dollar, which happened Friday.
Well,
listen. You can't underscore this enough. That we got this 900-point hit, and then we also got a % fall off on the dollar. That is
again, you have to. So the long-term cycle, Greg, in October, the long-term cycle kicks in for gold. Okay, so come September into next year, we've got a very, very powerful, when I say powerful, I mean multi-month, powerful bull market rise on gold, silver, and the cryptocurrencies. But basically, specifically, gold and silver, we're going to see this very powerful cycle begin on the 10th month going into next year. And so go ahead.
But I wanted to bring this up. I wanted to make sure I bring this up because you said, listen, you said this in a pre-interview, and I want you to say it here. And you said, we're going to get, a big rise in gold and silver, and then they're going to beat it down. Explain that.
When they initially lose control of gold, And silver, we might see a spike to $60 on silver very quickly, okay, a tripling in the price, maybe 3.5 or so. So when we get that initial spike, that's wonderful. But trust me, they don't want it there. So they're gonna completely try to hammer the price down. Drop the price down. So don't be surprised if you see a sudden sharp drop. But that's what the cycle actually points to. We're gonna see a very powerful move, then a very sharp drop, not to these levels, okay? But if it goes to 60, it might drop to 40, I'm just guessing. And then we're gonna have the big move come later. And when I say later, it means when the 9 cycle completes or the 9th month completes, then come the latter part of this year, October into year end, that is when we should start seeing the next powerful bull market phase begin. And that's when probably we'll start seeing the bonds start to break, so we're going to see prices on gold going to silver going to $200, $300, $400, and those are the numbers that we're going to be seeing.
You may see the bonds break before
and I don't think it'll be, and good luck on getting it at that time. It's going to be called, that time silver is going to be called, it's going to be that, the joke that everybody called unobtainium. That's what that's what's going to happen.
And you may get the bond market breaking also. I mean, in your new era of time, this debt cycle is looking like it's going to pop. I mean, you've got that market crash, the stock market, but I'm hearing that the bond market, which is orders of magnitude bigger than the stock market, ain't digging on all the money printing. I mean, effects on interest rates, effects on defaults, effect on all this Corona thing, effects on inflation. I mean, there's going to be a downside to all this money printing, is there not?
Well, a new era is just that, Greg. It's everything you thought or you grew up with, everything you lived with, all of it changes. You don't believe me? Look where you are right now. People listen, they're at home. They're stuck in their house. I would say that is something that's never happened in hundreds of years. The point is, this is an incredible shift in time. And so when this new era starts, it's going to be new everything. It doesn't happen in one day, but we're going to see a new monetary system rise. We're going to see the old bond system start to break and collapse and fall apart. Everything in your world changes for the same reason, you're seeing, no food on the shelves. Because why? That never happened before, but we're approaching this new era.
Bo Polny, you know what? We're going to end it right there. So we've been more than an hour, but I just let it roll because you spent a lot of time with this presentation. It took you started working on it for a couple of weeks ago, and you did a slick job. It's God's 17 Kingdoms, Daniel's Timeline. That'll be the title you need to look for on Bo Polny's Gold2020forecast.com. And then we also have on USAWatchdog.com in the after the interview section, God's 7 Kingdoms, Daniel's Timeline, which is all this is what is based on. This timing is where your cycle work is done, and this is fantastic, and you're giving it away for free. I really appreciate it, Bo. I know you also do your cycles, nearer term cycles for gold and silver and Bitcoin, in stocks and other things like that you sell to people. So there's a sign up page. I'll put that up there on the end of the thing if people want to do it. I appreciate you coming on, Bo, and spending all this time. Last time you were on, you cut your subscription price in half for a time period, and evidently a lot of people went ahead and re-upped with it. So whatever. I don't get, just so people know, Bo and I are not in business together. I had Bo on the first time because I thought he was going to be right, and he was. I'm having him on now because, well, he was right, and I think he's going to be right again. So, Bo, I really appreciate you coming on and basically putting together a super big free presentation. Thank you very much for coming on USAWatchdog.com.
Thank you, Greg, for having me. It's my pleasure, and telling you, what I got right, the glory goes to God. I'm telling you, Greg, because there's no way I could have done this. There's no way I could have done this on my own. So thank you, Greg, for having me here.
Yeah, that's a good phrase. That's a good way to end it. The glory goes to God and Jesus Christ. And Bo Polny, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.